You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney. The people you want to hear from and the things you need to know in Northeast Ohio and beyond. Get in the know, stay in the know. Starting right now.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm Stephanie Haney, your host, and we have got a fun one for you this week. We are talking about dating in the pandemic. Now, in the most average of times, people think about dating in a lot of different ways. There are some people who think about dating as something fun and exciting, and they love getting to meet new people. They're very social. They're very outgoing. There are other people who think about dating as this sort of terrible purgatory that you have to trudge through in order to eventually end up with your person, right? Well, no matter where you end up on that spectrum, dating is really a whole different world right now for single people. It's a whole different world for everyone, but in this world, specifically challenging for single people right now because we're in a pandemic and the stakes are higher to meet up. Think about it. If you have a bad date with someone in person, what do you have to do? Do you have to quarantine for 2 weeks before you can go out on another date? That's a big investment. That's a big time investment in someone, even if it never moves past a first date. And here in Ohio, with the massive spikes that we're seeing in COVID-19 cases, that's putting some Ohioans under stay-at-home advisories. And this impacts single people in a very specific way. For example, if you live alone, you're not in a couple, and you're being told to stay home and only be with the people in your household, well, that's just you. And that's spending a lot of time with yourself. Now, if you're ignoring that, you could be the one out there spreading COVID-19, which no one wants to see. So what are single people to do? Well, one way that people have been meeting up for a very long time is through dating apps. According to PC Mag in 2019, Tinder is actually the most popular dating app in the state of Ohio. Now, Match, which many of us know as Match.com, that's the parent company that owns Tinder, and also Hinge, which many of us know as the anti-Tinder dating app, and that kind of goes along with the stereotypes associated with those apps. Tinder is kind of known as the hookup app. Hinge is known as the one that's a little bit more for people who are looking for something a little bit more serious. But there's lots of dating that is happening in those places. Now, when it comes to dating, we know what we're doing. We're only one part of that equation, though. There's at least one other person involved. So to get us in the know on what's happening on the other side of our screens, my first guest today is Match's chief dating expert, Rachel DeAlto. So we'll bring Rachel in right now. Rachel, thank you for being here on the Three Things to Know podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Dating is such an interesting topic, just in the most normal of times. And I use normal in quote marks because what's normal, especially when it comes to dating, right? Has there been a big push when it comes to the online dating world to do things more safely? What has Match been doing in order to make that happen?
In terms of the pandemic and dating during the pandemic, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a huge, obviously, it's a concern of ours, and we want to make sure that all of our users feel safe while dating. And I think one of the first things that we did was launch something that we had kind of happening before everything hit in March and April was Vibe Check, which is our video in-app ability to kind of get on that video chat and connect on a virtual way. And like I said, that kind of was in the hopper before everything started. And then we realized, oh my gosh, this is something that can actually really help people to stay safe. You don't have to give out your personal information. You don't have to get on FaceTime. You can actually do the vibe check in the app. And then the other things that I think are really important in terms of safety is it's such an interesting situation with the pandemic where every city, every state is so different. So we want people to be able to express, what are you comfortable with? Because someone in Sacramento could have a very different experience than someone in Cincinnati in terms of laws and regulations and quarantining rules. And so we have a lot of questions that are now really front and center so that people can just say, hey, listen, I'm not giving you a hug on the first date. I expect you to wear a mask. I'm only interested in virtual, like be able to delineate what that is so that you're comfortable.
We are really finding ourselves in a situation where you have to really set your boundaries very clearly up front. And that might be something that maybe people weren't thinking about as much prior to the pandemic.
Not at all. I mean, it's such an interesting thing, and we see it now too with the holidays. You know, I see your tree in the background. I think about Christmas time. I was just watching a segment on a show where they were talking about how do you tell your family members that you have to wear a mask in my house. So I think everybody's having to set these boundaries, but especially with dating, because this isn't your family. This is some person that you have not met yet, and
Right.
you're now, exposing yourself to there's obviously different levels of risk in different areas, but you kind of have to really think that through and like, okay, what is worth it? And this is what I'm willing to be okay with. And I'm not going to change that just because I think you're cute.
Sure. Yeah. Not changing. That's not, you can't change people. That's what they say. And you don't want to start out on the first date wanting to do that anyway. But,
Yeah.
they say there are plenty of fish in the sea, right? But how is the pond stocked right now is what I want to know. Are as many people dating? What is the activity looking like on dating apps compared to pre-pandemic?
It's crazy. I have to tell you, it's been record setting in just the past few months. When we look at right now, we're in cuffing season. So typically during those winter months, people start to kind of connect more intently. And our numbers from this past October to last year, 2019 October, is 30% more activity. So that's a huge number. And that's been kind of what we've seen throughout the last year is when you can't go out as much, when you can't be face to face with people as much, we do turn online. And that is kind of the benefit of where we're at in this digital age where you can pick up your phone, you can download the app, and you can still have that socialization because the desire to meet people, that doesn't go anywhere.
It's so interesting that you say that. I had a very interesting conversation with someone, and this was years ago. And this person told me they met their wife on JDate. And he told me that he loved it because it was the most efficient way that he could meet people, because he could be not only meeting people out in person, which of course is limited right now, but also he could be meeting people while he was making dinner, not even on his phone, and then he looks on his phone and sees how many people that he's met. So I just thought that was a very interesting way of describing the efficiency of dating apps.
Yeah, I think dating apps are a tool. I think anyone who's on an app shouldn't just sit home and never go out and meet people in real life. But it's a beautiful tool, and especially I think in 2020, to still feel like you can connect with people. And I know I've talked to a lot of singles who it was kind of that saving grace of this was they started out January like, this is my year. I'm going to focus on love and I'm going to find a relationship. And then all of a sudden you're locked in your bedroom because of quarantine. And so allowing us to use apps like Match as a tool to say, no, I can still do this. I can still connect with people. And we found that people really were falling in love on video. So whereas before pre-COVID, nobody was on video, to ask somebody to FaceTime you before a date, people would be like, wait a second, what are you talking about?
What are your trust issues? Tell me.
Exactly. Like, do you think I'm a serial killer? So that just wasn't a thing. And then as soon as COVID hit and we were stuck at home, all of a sudden people are like, yeah, video dating is awesome. Because now it's not only you have the efficiency of being able to meet people like the person you're talking to while you're cooking dinner, but you can also video chat with them. And listen, I've never met Brad Pitt in person, but I could tell via screen, I think I would definitely be attracted to him. So you can gauge a lot more. And I think we're realizing that there's some really good things that could come out of this.
Mm-hmm. Kind of bridging the gap between the in-person and the online dating world, really. Now, we might be seeing people that are new to dating apps just in general now, who previously, hadn't done it, had maybe been living under a rock or something. I don't know. No, there are people who hadn't been done it. There are people who have, just preferred to meet people in person, of course. But for the people who are new to it, what's the culture like on dating apps right now? Are people matching more or less?
People are definitely matching more. And some of the most interesting data that we saw so Match does a Singles in America study every year. This year was our 10th year. And we found that people had started to shift towards more intentional dating. So 58% of single app daters, not just on Match, shifted toward more intentional dating. And that means that they're actually really intentional about what they're doing. They're not just swiping, they're not just there for hookups, they're really intentionally looking to meet somebody. And 53% of those singles were prioritizing a search for a relationship. So it's interesting. If you had not been on that before, this is a great time, especially if you are looking for someone significant, because I think that mindset has really shifted in 2020. Whereas, maybe everything was kind of up in the air or whatnot. And then 2020 hit and you're like, wait a second, I need to prioritize this. This is something I'm looking for.
Well, and then in terms of all the matching that's happening. So sometimes on these dating apps, when people are matched with a lot of people, there is a tendency to forget about a conversation or maybe ignore a conversation and give a little love to a different conversation. So when people are matching right now, what do you think? Are there more or less instances of the dreaded ghosting happening?
I think you're always going to see ghosting. So, and this is what happens. So people match based on kind of that initial reaction to pictures or a profile. And then you get in there and you're like, this isn't really, I'm not feeling the vibe. Or I met somebody else, because you're literally meeting all these people while you're cooking dinner. You met somebody else that you find a little bit more interesting. So the ghosting thing is always going to happen. We do see more deeper conversations happening. And one thing, another element that Match brought out in the recent months is something called dates, where we allow people to really kind of earmark what are the matches that I'm making that I really want to push forward. And then they end up in this more siphoned off category where both parties now know, oh no, this is somebody that I'm really interested in getting to know. So I think there is that shift towards intentional dating. The ghosting thing is probably not gonna, go away, because while we're even intentionally dating, we're gonna realize that person might not be for me. So I just tell people, don't take it personally. Like you said, there's plenty of fish in the sea. And if someone isn't paying you attention, then they're not really worth your energy.
True. And do unto others. If you don't want to be ghosted, don't ghost. Just say, hey, this isn't my vibe. I wish you the best, whatever, just a little
Godspeed.
Little word of advice to people out there. So in having these conversations though, like you said, we can't really do as much in a lot of places. It's going to vary from place to place. But, here in Cleveland, for example, right now in the state of Ohio, we've got a 10 p.m. curfew happening, and lots of counties here are under an advisory to only go out to get your groceries and things like that. So that kind of limits what you could talk about to a certain level. But I hear that Animal Crossing has become a popular trend for conversation on dating apps.
No, I have not seen that, but
Okay.
it doesn't surprise me. I think that people are, you're going to try to find some sort of commonality. I think that's something typical with anyone on a dating app, is you want to try to figure out, okay, what are the common topics of conversation? So if we're home a lot and we're, I guess it's Animal Crossing or Candy Crush. Thank God I've never downloaded either one of them. But I think that, people are going to just try to connect and relate on whatever topic they can. And if it's not, hey, where did you go out last night? Maybe you raised an animal. I don't even know what that game is.
To be honest, I don't know what it is either, but it seems to be very popular, particularly with the younger folks. I would imagine the Gen Z. So we'll have to ask somebody. I don't know. I'll have to call
I'm going to find a Gen Z.
Yeah. What's going on in Animal Crossing? Obviously, we need to get hip to it.
It's like, do you raise animals? Do you just cross them across the street? I don't understand.
It's not very clear by the name, It's
Yeah.
not like Match. You know what's happening with Match. We know what's happening there. When it does come to actually meeting up, though, what's that looking like? Is that happening more or less now than the pre-pandemic? I have to say, when I first, years and years ago, ventured into the online dating world and actually went out on a date, obviously that's changed now, but my friends were shocked that I actually went out on a date, and I was thinking to myself, well, you guys have been doing this. Like, have you not been meeting up? So what is that like now? Are people actually meeting up? Like, with what kind of frequency?
They are. So it's interesting too. I guess it's such a bizarre year, because in any other year, the data that we collected in July would still be relevant, but I'm not even sure that it is. So, we're looking at, from the Singles in America study, that 2/3 of people were really open to meeting up in person again. But at this point, with everything spiking and different orders, I'm not exactly sure what those numbers are. In every situation we've seen, throughout this, that there are certain people that are willing to meet in person, certain people are absolutely not willing. So it's really a mixed bag. And the biggest thing that I say is, obviously pay attention to your local authorities and your local rules, but more so pay attention to that personal risk tolerance, and don't just meet them because they want to meet. I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, no, he was he was actually in Cleveland. And they were saying, why can't we meet up, and try to convince them to meet at a restaurant. And she's just like, I'm not comfortable with that. And he had a hard time accepting that. And I think that's kind of the biggest challenge right now, is you have to stay true to yourself, but you still want to put yourself in a position to meet people and connect. And I say, just recognize that, the right person is going to understand and be empathetic to where you come from.
And this is a really great time, by the way, if depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for someone to grow old with, maybe you can go out to eat every single day, but maybe you can't. This is a great time to figure out if you like doing puzzles or playing chess or watching old movies with someone. And if you can actually do something sustaining in that way, we've definitely got that going for us at this time.
Yeah, I think the relationships that are starting now, and especially the ones that we're forced to kind of build during quarantine, are ones that are going to be really deeper and have kind of that really strong foundation, because you don't have the distraction of sitting at a bar and people watching. You don't have the distraction of going to a movie and not talking. You have to talk to each other and you have to connect. So there's a lot of benefits to that.
And you mentioned before, we touched on this briefly, you said it does seem that people are looking for more deeper connections. Do you have any kind of an idea, just on a split, on what people are looking for, casual versus long-term versus consistent quarantine bae, as it has been called?
Yeah, we had some data about how so many people had hooked up with their roommate during quarantine. It was very interesting.
No. It could be great. It could be great. It sounds a little bit like a nightmare to me, but it could be great.
Yeah, a little too close to home. But I think, I think the biggest one that we're really seeing right now is that 53% are really prioritizing a search for a relationship. So that's a relationship. That's not just somebody to date casually. Like, they want to be in a relationship with someone. So, does that change post quarantine? Was it like that before? I think a lot of people were still looking for relationships even pre-COVID. But I have seen that increase in people that are looking for something more significant. And that's not just because they can't go out and hook up with people.
Right. Speaking of that, by the way, I did see an interesting statistic reported by the New York Times. Sexually transmitted infections, at least reported instances of them, are down in the pandemic, but some experts are saying they do think that might be due to a lack of reporting. So we don't know necessarily what the situation is there, because we do know people are still dating and, doing the things that go along with dating at some point. So just a little interesting aside to throw out there. Yeah. It would be interesting to see what the actual cause of that is in the long term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes sense in both directions. It makes sense that if that it would go down if the hookups are happening less, but it also does make sense if people aren't going to the doctor as much, because I know that's been an issue as well,
right,
with COVID. So,
right.
But yeah, I think that, well, especially during quarantine, the hookup culture was dead for a hot minute, and now I think it's it is what it is. It's not ever going to go away entirely. I think there are always going to be people that are just looking for something special. Mm-hmm. Whatever they choose, I just say, just be honest in your search.
That's right. There is a lid for every pot. Whatever you're looking for, there's definitely somebody out there that's looking for it too, because matches come in all shapes and sizes.
Exactly.
Speaking of the hookup culture, though, if you can answer this question, I'm not sure if you can, but, Match does own Tinder and Hinge. Typically, Tinder, recently reported as the most popular dating app in Ohio, that's been known to be sort of the hookup app. Hinge has been known as the anti-Tinder app. Match falls into that world somewhere as well. So for people who are maybe getting into the dating apps for the first time, do those stereotypes still ring true for those particular apps?
I don't know on the data side of things, but I can tell just from the, observation side, because we're very separated under the parent company. But I think that, the reputations are there, but I think that in terms of the hookup, I do think that things have shifted a little bit in that zone. I know that in our mindset, Match has always been the one that focuses on that intentional dating. So we're excited that people are shifting their mindsets towards where we're at.
More questions, letting people know more about yourself. It's more work, right, to create a profile on Match than it is for Tinder or Hinge.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you want to get a little deeper. Sorry, my dog is like needing attention right now.
That
This
is
is why
all of
you're
us.
not. It's why you're not allowed in when I'm doing these.
Hey, that's why we're talking about this. We could all use a little more attention. So hello to
He
your
does
puppy.
all the time. Um, but yeah, I think part of the intent behind this and kind of the match mindset is because we want intentional daters. We want people who are not necessarily, they don't need to run off and get married, but they are looking for something more significant than just a hookup. And that takes effort. Everything that that you value should take a little bit.
Anything that takes a little bit of work is usually a little bit more appreciated. That's been my personal experience.
Exactly.
All right, Rachel, do you have any parting words of dating advice for people who are not coupled up right now before I let you go?
I think the biggest thing is just stay hopeful and know that there are so many people out there that are looking for something significant. I think the beautiful thing about 2020, there's not a lot of things that we can look at and say, wow, that was really awesome. I do think it gave people a minute to become more self-aware and realize that possibly the priorities that they were setting weren't exactly in the order that they should be. So I think people have used that self-awareness and that companionship can come out of that. So there's a lot of possibility out there.
If nothing else, we are learning a lot about ourselves right now.
We are. Did you learn about yourself, Mac?
We learned a little bit about Mac, that Mac likes attention, and we're here for it. Yes. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I think the takeaway there is good news for single people everywhere. Dating is alive and well, and there are safe ways to do it, even in a pandemic. There are also no shortage of apps out there geared toward whatever it is you're looking for in terms of the kind of connection that you would like right now. Now, for people who want a more controlled experience, maybe when it comes to meeting new people, there's also the option of private matchmaking, which is a whole different world in and of itself. So to get us in the know on that, my next guest is private matchmaker Ashley Bakewell from It's Just Lunch Cleveland. Let's bring in Ashley right now. Ashley, thanks for being here on the 3 Things to Know podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So glad to have you here to sort of fill people in on what this world is like. Dating, of course, is a very intimate experience, getting to know another person, and then bringing in another person like a private matchmaker. That's intimate on just a whole different level. And so I want to know from you is, how has your job changed since the pandemic hit us here in Ohio in March?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we went from scheduling dates in person at restaurants or bars to not being able to do that. So we flipped the switch, we pivoted, and now we launched virtual dating. So we've been doing virtual dates since April, and it's going better than I ever thought it would. It's fun. My clients are loving it. And we're actually finding more relationships are developing through virtually. And I think a lot of that has to do with people being more authentic. It's been a weird time with the pandemic, and people were finding themselves in their home, lonely, and they're realizing they really need to take some action on their dating life. So things have changed, but we're bringing on new clients every day.
Well, that's exciting to hear, definitely for the prospect of the people who are listening who aren't coupled up right now, who might be thinking about doing this. In terms of your clientele, what kind of a shift have you seen there? Like number of clients, who they are, what they're looking for? What does that landscape look like right now?
So I don't think a lot has changed for what people are looking for specifically. I think, what we're finding is people want to meet somebody that share the same commonalities, that have similar interests, similar hobbies, lifestyles. Our service is geared towards busy professionals that maybe don't have time to date or aren't having success online. So our service is a lot more selective. We're getting to know our clients one-on-one, and we're matching them based on what they're looking for specifically. We're guaranteeing dates, and I think people just really want a committed, happy, healthy relationship.
Has anybody ever come to you specifically and you were like, I don't know if you're a good fit for private matchmaking?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes people have unrealistic expectations when it comes to dating. And, those aren't always the type of clients that I want to work with. Dating's hard. It's scary. There's so many unknown things that come with dating, but I want it to be fun and exciting. And I want to put you in front of the type of people that realistically are going to fit with what you're looking for. So yeah, sometimes I've had to, hold off on working with people because their expectations are just a little too crazy for me.
So definitely there is some, on both ends of the prospects, there's some vetting. So that's interesting to know, depending on getting into the private matchmaking world. Now, It's Just Lunch also has another service that's called Elite Private Search. What's the difference between signing up for private matchmaking with It's Just Lunch and with Elite Private Search?
So It's Just Lunch. We're getting to know our clients. We're matching them based on specifically what they're looking for, commonalities and such. But we're only matching you with other members of It's Just Lunch. Now, Elite Private Search is a little different. So it's more of a selective boutique style service. And a lot of those clients are looking for somebody on an intellectual level who's on their level financially. And the big difference is we're networking and recruiting to find them matches specifically on what they're looking for.
That makes sense, because the way that I became even aware that Elite Private Search existed was because someone from the company actually slid into my DMs on LinkedIn, and I thought that was interesting. And something that I've said in the past is if you stay on any networking platform long enough, it becomes a dating app because people just slide into your DMs.
Right.
But I wasn't bothered by the DM coming into LinkedIn, but that was something I wanted to ask. Is that just a product of people aren't able to go out in the communities like they were because of the pandemic? Or is that something that portion of the company has been doing in order to connect with people for a long time?
So we've always been connecting with people through networking or social media. I think it's a great way to connect and get to know people. But yeah, we went from typically our recruiters are out networking, going to parties, meeting with referrals. They're out in the town looking for some really great quality matches for our elite members. But yeah, we've gotten a little more creative with it. We have always done it online, but I think we're just seeing more of that because we can't be out right now. And there's just not a lot of people out there. So,
well, in those times, that sounds like, of course it's work, but that sounds like a very fun job to be the recruiter for the dating service, to go out and see, hey, this person looks interesting. Let me chat with them and just go to this party and, see what happens. Sounds like fun.
That's how it works. It's fun. It's really fun.
And people can submit to be matches for people too, right?
Yes. So if you go to eliteprivatesearch.com, you can submit. Now, you can submit to be a candidate for one of our elite clients. Now, we can't always guarantee that you're going to go on a date, though. If we think you're a good fit for one of our members, then absolutely, we'll give you an introduction. We'll set up a date. But yeah, go to the website, fill that out. And essentially, our elite members and our It's Just Lunch members are paying members. But if you're a candidate, then essentially it's a free date.
That doesn't sound like a bad deal. I will say, though, when I was talking with this person about this over the LinkedIn DM, one thing that was interesting to me is it's a blind date. Now, is that if you're a candidate, or is that something that is just how you do it with Elite Private Search?
So that's how we do it on both sides. For the It's Just Lunch side or the elite side, it's a blind date. Now, we're still getting to know you, though, and we have to make sure that you're a good fit. And, he's a good match for you and vice versa. It's got to work both ways. So we're really focused on, quality matches that we think are going to be best interests on both sides. But yeah, essentially it's a blind date.
So no matter who you are, whether you're a candidate or a client, it's a blind date either way. You're just putting your faith in the matchmaker. Is that right?
Exactly.
Interesting. The real live blind date. Such a fascinating concept. I mean, but, clearly it is still happening.
It is interesting. We've been doing the blind dates for 29 years, and obviously it's been going really well. So, we're focusing on so many, obviously attraction's really important. It's important to all of my clients, and we'll get there based on fine tuning and getting your feedback after each date. But it's just going really well. The blind dates, I love them.
I think that's an interesting sense of adventure. Maybe it's the lawyer in me, maybe it's the investigative reporter in me who likes to do just a little bit of Google stalking before beforehand and seeing the pictures, but I think that would be a fun adventure too. Now, I do have to ask, so once all of this matching happens in the background, people get to know you as the matchmaker, you get to know the client, you get to know the candidates, the first meeting happens, and understandably, that's happening virtually these days. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so all of our first dates are starting off virtually. We're using Zoom for our dates, and they're logging in and they're having a great time. I think some people have this, they're assuming a virtual date isn't as fun as an in-person date, and I think I had that belief system too when we first launched virtual dating, but I really don't think it's much different than meeting in person. My clients are having fun with it. They're, cooking dinner together. They're watching a movie. They're playing a game. Have some fun with it. The virtual dates, I think, are just as good as meeting in person, if not better. And I think they might be here to stick.
This is something that people weren't really doing, though, with a lot of regularity before, right? Or was everybody just quietly having virtual FaceTime and video dates before meeting up before the pandemic hit?
I don't think a lot of people were doing virtual dates. I mean, at least based on what I've heard, I think this is a new thing. We had to switch quickly to get singles out and meet people, and we couldn't be doing that in person. So it is a new thing, but like I said, it's going really well. And what we're finding is people are having deeper conversations. I think a lot of that has to do, you're inside your own home. There's a huge convenience piece to the virtual dates too. And my clients love that. You can get home from work and refresh yourself and hop on a Zoom date real quick and have a really fun time in your living room.
So that's interesting that you say that as well, because I think that there's two ways to look at this. Are people doing more first dates now because they're virtual and they're easier? Or are people doing less first dates now because it is so personal and it can be kind of emotionally exhausting, really, if you're really getting into those deep levels?
I think it's a mix of both, really. I think it's a mix of, they're definitely more personable. I think dating's emotional for anybody in any, wherever you're at, whether that's at a restaurant or in your own home. So dating is really emotional with that. But yeah, I think it's personal, it's convenient. I think they will continue. I think it's a mix of both of what you said. But like I said, have fun. I think what the most important thing people need to remember, whether they're meeting somebody in person or virtually, have fun with it. Enjoy yourself. Make the best out of every situation. Really get to know that person. Don't be so judgy right off the bat. Nerves come into a first date always. Some people like to ramble when they're meeting somebody for the first time. So keep those things in mind when you're going on a first date.
Always a good idea to remember to give both ourselves and other people a little bit of grace, for sure. So doesn't sound like these virtual dates are going anywhere anytime soon. So how do we be better about that? Are there any major mistakes that you think people should avoid when it comes to virtual dating?
Yeah, I think you have to treat it just as you're going to a date in a restaurant. You want to get ready for the date. You want to be prepared. You want to wear something nice. You don't necessarily have to have your 6-inch heels on, but you want to be ready and prepared for the date, getting and being mentally prepared too. I think a big mistake that I'm not necessarily finding, but I can see people not taking virtual dates as seriously as they should be. For example, you don't want to be getting on a virtual date when you're in your car or on the golf course. You want to stay away from those things. So take it seriously and have some fun with it. If you're not ready to meet in person, right now, we're in Ohio, restaurants are open, you can meet in person. But if you're not comfortable with that, then just stick to the virtual dates. Get on a phone call. We're going back to the basics, from years ago, and it's going really well.
A nice little courting process, that's refreshing. A blast from the past. All right. Well, here's another question. I'm hearing the trend seems to be that people are getting deeper. They're getting more intimate. We're learning more about people. My stance on a first date has always been ask all the deal breaker questions. Just get it out of the way before anybody's invested and people are their most honest. But not everybody feels that way. Many of my girlfriends have told me that they think I'm a total psychopath by doing this. Fair enough on their end. But what is your stance on the tough questions on the first date? I'm talking politics, religion, marriage, kids. Should you lay it all out there, or should you hold back on those questions?
I think you want to hold back a little bit. My best advice to all of my clients is to stay away from politics, religion, past relationships. Now, we are finding that they're coming up more often now with virtual dates because, like you mentioned, they're just deeper conversations. People are being more real, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think talk about what you're comfortable talking about, but don't get into a first date where all you're talking about is who you voted for. Stay away from those stuff. It's important to get to know each other and having those conversation, asking, having that banter back and forth. So I think if you want to throw it all out there, just tread very lightly. Be yourself though. Don't hold back on things, be yourself. I think that's important, but also don't be giving it all out on a first date. I think the fun of dating is there's a little mystery there, right? So after you get off a first date, you want to, you're calling your girlfriend like, he was so great. I want to get to know him more. There's more mystery. So you want to keep going on dates to get to know each other. So no, I don't think you should be throwing it all out there because it can be overwhelming too. So keep that in mind.
I can see that, how it could be overwhelming. And there's also that, famous Maya Angelou quote, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And some of those topics can get a little heavy. So even if you feel very passionately and are both aligned when it comes to politics and religion and all of those things, the state of the world is it's a little dicey right now. So it could be a heavy conversation. So I can definitely appreciate that. All right, Ashley, do you have any other tips that you wish people knew that would help single people connect better right now?
Yes. I think the biggest thing people should know is, unfortunately, we're not meeting people organically like we want to. We want to walk into Starbucks and the woman or man of our dreams walks in and, here we are riding to the sunset. It's not happening like that. So if you want to meet somebody, you've got to take some massive action on that. So whether that's online dating or hiring a matchmaker, you've got to take some action. Sometimes it's a numbers game. Don't get discouraged if a date doesn't go the way you wanted it to, because we're on to the next one. So have fun with it, be positive, be happy, and really focus on looking for those healthy relationships. And stay safe. Stay safe. That's huge right now. So
stay safe. Absolutely. Number one, most paramount. We want people definitely to do that.
Yes.
Ashley, these are great tips for people. Thank you so much. If people are interested in learning more about It's Just Lunch and Elite Private Search, where should they go?
So you can go to itsjustlunch.com, fill out some information, and we'll give you a call, tell you about our services. Same with eliteprivatesearch.com. There, just fill out your information and we'll reach out to you.
All right, there you have it. Ashley, thank you so much for making time for us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I had fun.
Those were great tips from Ashley, and I think a lot of insight for people who maybe haven't done a lot of the virtual dating. And I'll also offer this tip. If you're going to do the virtual dating, you're doing like a FaceTime or a video chat of some kind or a Zoom, take some time to set up your camera, get yourself some nice lighting. This is coming, of course, from the TV side of things, but also I know a lot of my girlfriends who have gone on the virtual dates have a lot of anxiety about how they're going to look on camera over a screen. So it's not a bad idea to do a little test run with a friend if you can and kind of run through that. Make sure you like how you look. That's just one more way that we can all be just a little less anxious when it comes to these kinds of things. Now, as popular as virtual dating is, eventually you got to take things offline. So for this week's Need to Know in NEO, I've got 3 News multimedia producer and reporter Kierra Cotton to get us in the know on how to do that. Hi, Kierra.
How's it going, Steph? How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us on 3 Things to Know. And you are here to get us in the know on what people can do right now to connect with people in the dating world. What do you have for us?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Also, yes, so dating during the pandemic, as we all know, dating in general is just a struggle. But during the pandemic, it makes it even harder. But I do have an idea for you guys to do that you can do from the comfort of your home. And we kind of talked about this a little bit before. You might want to do this on maybe like a 3rd or 4th date. Like once you're comfortable, you've researched everyone's bubble. But this is an at-home, take-home paint and sip kind of process type of thing.
Okay.
It is from Rocky River Wine and Design, and they are located obviously in Rocky River. But the kit that it comes with a 16 by 20 canvas. The image is already printed on, so it makes it super convenient. All you need is the paint that they provide, the brushes, plate, and napkin. So you don't have to worry about being Picasso. They sketch the design out for you. So you're just enjoying the experience of painting.
Okay, this is really interesting because I was wondering, thinking about doing these paint and sip things, that's just like a fun activity to do, right? But there's usually an instructor there when you do it in person. So this is kind of like they've made it paint by numbers. It's literally foolproof.
Exactly. You cannot mess this up.
So no stress of trying to impress the date. Of course, like you said, maybe this is after like 3 or 4 FaceTimes or something when you've decided, okay, it's worth meeting this person in person. Not that it's worth it, but you know what I mean. It's worth the risk. Everybody's worth it. We're all worthwhile humans.
Exactly. Like I said, make sure you've researched your bubbles and you're not going to like kill grandma. Mike DeWine is all telling us to mask up and, limit our social interactions. So this is something that this person is someone that you may be considering seriously. You see this more dates down the line should be planned. Like this isn't a first date idea at all.
Right. And then you're either meeting at somebody's home. You're either coming to your home or their home or whatever. So this is going to be someone that you feel very comfortable with. It's in Rocky River. It's called Wine and Design, you said?
Yes. Wine and Design, Rocky River Wine and Design. I did pull up the exact address, which I was trying to do at the beginning. It is 21194 Center Ridge Road. So
okay.
Everybody check it out. And tickets are only $30 per person. So really kind of affordable, especially with all that you're getting. All the supplies come, obviously, just put down a little tarp or something, even do it at like a table, and you're all set.
And, just get your wine in advance or your vodka or your Diet Coke or whatever it is that you choose to have.
Right. And get it delivered, have takeout, make it a whole little experience. It's a super cute idea.
I love that.
Oh, and then I also have participated in a paint and sip one of these things. So I have my painting here to show you.
Oh, I love that.
It's a much bigger canvas than I think that they're providing because this was done prior to the pandemic. So this isn't what's included in the kit, but it's definitely a cute, fun, at-home idea. And I just wanted to share with you my little artwork that I was proud of.
So what we're looking at here is a beautiful, colorful elephant if you're listening to this on the podcast. And this is also up on YouTube, so you can head over to the WKYC YouTube page. I'll put that link in the show notes so you can go directly to it and see Kierra's beautiful design. Kierra, this is such a great date idea. Thank you for sharing this with us. Who knew that you could still do the things like the paint and sip things that have been those sort of classic date ideas, but we can still do them at home right now.
Very much the new normal. Got to make it happen.
All right, Kierra, let us know where people can follow you so they can get clued in on all of your up-to-the-moment pop culture references.
Yeah, sure. I am on Facebook and Twitter at Kierra Cotton and on Instagram at simply_KI__.
All right. We'll have those linked in the show notes too. Kierra, thanks for joining us for Need to Know in NEO today.
Thanks for having me.
What a great idea for a date night. And also great advice from Kierra about putting down a drop cloth or something before you get started with that particular date, especially if you're a little bit clumsy. That would definitely be me. And now this brings us to a good follow. This is my weekly recommendation to spruce up your feed online. And this week, we have an unlikely Tinder user. I'm talking about the 30 Rock Tree. That account is 30 Rock Tree, and this is a parody Twitter account for the holiday tree in Rockefeller Center in New York City. And the reason I bring this up right now is because this account tweeted about making a Tinder profile, and it made the news in New York. The post said that the tree was single and ready to mingle and is ready for someone to pine over him. I also happen to particularly love a good, bad pun, and this is full of them because if this went over your head like it did for me at first, it took me a minute to realize that Tinder is also a certain type of wood used to start a fire. And that is amazing. And you can follow the 30 Rock Tree for all kinds of hilariousness. And as if that wasn't good enough, the creator of the 30 Rock Tree account is an Ohioan. His name is Matt Hayes, and he's originally from North Olmsted. Now, he's living in Puerto Rico right now, and he also spent time living in New York City. But he says he's got eyes on the ground. He knows what's happening in New York so he can properly tweet as the 30 Rock Tree. And I promise you, It will make you laugh, and it truly is a good follow. That's it for the 3 Things to Know podcast this week. I hope you had a good time. Hopefully you learned something about online dating and how to better connect if you're a single person out in this world. And also if you're not a single person out in this world, maybe you learned a little bit more about what the single people are going through. Make sure you come back next week. New episodes drop every Saturday. And if you like what you're hearing, I would absolutely love if you would subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it. And maybe share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you back here next week. I'm Stephanie Haney.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.